We are now in Chapter 7 of Desjardins' Introduction to Business Ethics, and it is employee responsibilities. That is the topic of Chapter 7. And this is Aspect 1, in which we're going to have a discussion of the 2008 financial crisis, from which we will go on to discuss the conflict of interest between duties to employer and duties to the public. The previous topic was that of moral responsibility of employer to employees, due process rights, as well as possibly participation rights, employee rights. And we explored due process and participation rights, examining Desjardins' argument that employers owe these rights to employees. The current topic, well, these rights at the very least, possibly there are others. The current topic inquires into what kinds of rights employers can be said to have against employees, or what sort of moral obligations there are from employees to employers. Let's start with the 2008 housing bubble. Desjardins starts the discussion by actually discussing a third party to the relationship of employees and employers, arguing that the kind of harm these third parties undergo limits the possible employer rights and employee obligations. The third party is the public, you and I, everyone. In the lead up to the 2008 crisis, lots of risky housing loans were given that were not likely to be repaid. The banks that gave the loans bundled them together with other less risky safety assets and sold them on the market to the other buyers. What made this especially easy was that it was easy to hide, and more importantly, to overlook the presence of these risky loans in the bundles. People were just buying these loan bundles without knowing what's in them. There could have been very safe ones, very risky ones, and just the average rate was shown. That is to say that the bundle that what was buying was only moderately risky. The risk raters and auditors for these loans were hired by the very banks that issued them. The bundles were rated as less risky than they were in reality. Too many bad loans were given, and when many of such loans defaulted, the housing market crashed, and many people lost money in it. These were the defaulted homeowners, investors, other homeowners, and everyone else, since the whole of economy and employment has been affected significantly by this market crash. All of that contributed to the general market crash of the financial crisis of 2008, from which just about all of the members of the public suffered. Of interest to us in all of the proceeding is this: the conflict of interests in those auditors and raters. On the one hand, the auditors and raters had a duty to their employers to do what is in the best interest of the employers. On the other hand, they had their professional duty to tell the truth about the funds they were auditing and rating. Furthermore, they also had a duty to the public not to harm its interests. The duty not to harm the public correlated with their professional duty. We can make sense of the duty to not harm the public on the utilitarian grounds. When the public is harmed, the harms are likely to be larger than the possible gains by employers. There are so many members of the public, and there are fewer employers who benefited from these risky loans for however long they were able to do it. We can also make sense of the duty not to harm the public on the Kantian grounds. Members of the public would not autonomously choose to have businesses operating in their community that cause harm to the members of those communities.